Listen, don't bully your classmates if you don't want a zombie apocalypse to happen in your school. And that's why today in Flick Summary, All of Us Are Dead. Episode 1. All of Us Are Dead starts off with a punch opening with a whole bunch of high schoolers on a rooftop beating up a kid, Jin-soo, who has ran into some trouble with school bullies. The bullies beat him black and blue and even go as far as breaking some bones. All of a sudden, after being left in the ground to fend for himself, Jin-soo full-on hulks up as adrenaline takes over as if he hadn't been kicked and punched just a few seconds ago by his main bully, Guinam. He tries to put up a fight, but unfortunately the bullies move away and Jin-soo falls from the roof as the bad guys just watch, not really shocked by what just happened, and walk away. We then cut to a hospital as Mr. Lee, a high school science teacher who happens to be Jin-soo's dad, arrives to check up on his badly beaten but should be dead son. Much to everyone's surprise, Jin-soo seems to be okay considering everything he just went through. Jin-soo starts becoming lethargic and attempts to bite his own father as he succumbs to a zombie transformation. Realizing his face can't be reversed, Mr. Lee picks up a Bible and beats his own son with it, hoping to end his zombified persona. Mr. Lee then packs his son inside a suitcase, planning to bury him. However, he gets quite a bit of a scare when Jin-soo's arms pops out of the suitcase, ready to consume his dad's brains. And then boom! Cue the intro. Let's flash forward a bit of time as we enter a fancy high school where Mr. Lee works at. There, she enters Mr. Lee's empty laboratory and notices a covered box. Deciding to check it, she encounters a tiny rat and is actually rather friendly with it, unlike how she treats her peers. The rat then begins to behave erratically and violently, biting the girl's fingers in the process. Mr. Lee catches her red-handed and is aware that what follows is anything but pretty, so he does the next logical thing: lock her inside the lab and keep her away from humans at all costs. After this happens, we are introduced to our main characters, Chang-sun, An-jo, two students who live in the same apartment complex, Isak, An-jo's best friend, Gwang-soo, Chang-sun's best friend, and Soo-hyuk, the school's heartthrob and protector of bullied students, even though he himself was a bully once upon a time. Oh, and he's also An-jo's crush. The bullies, led by Guinam, have also landed themselves a brand new victim, a girl named Yoon-ji, who is forced to undress as they record, humiliating her to unparalleled extents. Meanwhile, An-jo tells Soo-hyuk that she has a crush on him, but he doesn't seem too interested, not even bothering to give her an answer to her declaration. Ouch. The day after the hamster bites the girl, let's call her Patient Zero. The school's teacher, Mrs. Park, notices Patient Zero is absent and asks the students if anyone has heard of her. As you might expect, no one has. All the while, Mr. Lee does his best to keep her hidden and continuously sedates her, trying to keep her zombie-like symptoms at the minimum. As it turns out, he didn't do too much of a good job at keeping her restrained, as she is quick to escape once she was out of his sight, entering the teacher's classroom all beaten up and looking seriously ill. Patient Zero explains that Mr. Lee has kept her locked and is the one that did this to her. The students then hurriedly carry her into the infirmary, where another girl with a severe tummy ache was expecting to be attended, but clearly she isn't the main priority at the moment. Patient Zero starts showing the lethargic symptoms we all know too well and then bites the nurse before getting rushed to the hospital. The teachers then confront Mr. Lee about what happened to Patient Zero, unaware of the chaos that's going on at the school at the moment. He explains that she needs to be quarantined but gets arrested by local police. Oh boy. As this is happening, the nurse starts showing the same symptoms Patient Zero did and grabs a hold of one of the students, chewing his face off and immediately infecting him. What follows is a whole parade of infected students trying to bite humans as they do their very best to keep away from them. It's absolute mayhem. There's blood and zombies everywhere, and it seems to get harder to get away from them by the minute. The episode ends with a zombie student getting ready to sink his teeth in An-jo. Episode 2. In case you were wondering, An-jo doesn't get bitten by the zombie and is rescued by Chang-sun. Thank God. As you can imagine, this episode is more about students running for their lives, trying to avoid getting bit by a zombie, and the strategies they come up with to do exactly that. This episode starts us off with students running around the entire school as they do their very best to stay alive and get away from zombies. However, the zombie infection has spread insanely fast and the undead are just about flooding the entire school. Chang-sun, Soo-hyuk, Isak, Gwang-soo, and An-jo have been caught in the midst of the whole chaos in the cafeteria and are trying to find a way out of the horde. Luckily, they managed to land inside a classroom filled with other students that have not yet been infected, gladly welcoming anyone that doesn't pose a threat to their safety. Meanwhile, Mr. Lee is being held in custody for questioning as Jae-ik, a detective, tries to figure out why he locked up Patient Zero. He doesn't explain his motives to Jae-ik, but it is rather obvious to us viewers. He wanted to avoid a zombie apocalypse. and rightfully so. We then get a flashback of an experiment Mr. Lee conducted on some rats and their chemical responses when confronted against a scary scenario, observing that they fight back instead of cowering in fear. He extracted this hormone and administered it to his son in hopes that he too would be able to fight back. Well, Jinsu turned into a merciless killing machine, infecting his mother, and died. I suppose that wasn't a great idea, Mr. Lee. Now, remember how patient Zero got taken to a hospital? She goes full-on zombie mode there, infecting anyone that crosses her path. Great. As this is happening, the uninfected group of students is desperately calling 911, but given the nature of the situation, the dispatchers assume it's a prank and decide to ignore the calls. To make matters worse, a teacher that looked healthy joined them, but turned out to be a zombie, leading them to leave their haven and search for another one. They fight through a sea of zombies but manage to find a relatively safe location for the time being. However, Soo-hyuk is nowhere to be found. There's some other activity going on other than our main character's hiding spot, like another group of students who are hiding in the bathroom but encounter yet another zombie. They try to kill it but fail on their first attempt. Luckily, a member of the school's archery team was there to save the day and is able to kill the zombified girl with just one arrow. Cool! Later, the teacher, Miss Park, does an emergency announcement and does her very best to remain calm as she encourages students to stay alive. We make a quick visit over to Soo-hyuk, who is now fighting zombies on his own like a badass and is actually alive and well. Phew! We then cut back to these students where Anjo's best friend Isok tries to ease her worries about not knowing the whereabouts of her crush, Soo-hyuk. In an effort to show her support, Isok grabs Anjo's hand, but something is off. Her hands are a little too cold. It doesn't take them more than a second to realize that in the midst of all the chaos, Isok had been bitten. The group realizes they need to either kill her or kick her out, but Anjo struggles making the call. Chang-san steps in and kicks her out the window as Anjo tries to save her, but realizes there's no point and ultimately watches her friend fall to her death. Noticing there's a fire hose they can use to their favor, the group then ties little knots so they can rappel down the window and enter a safer area, seeing as the zombies were about to break in. Each student begins rappelling down the window and into another classroom, landing right where Miss Park is located. After Anjo goes down, it's Chang-san's turn to rappel, but just as he does so, the zombies break into the classroom and throw themselves down the window, leaving us to wonder what Chang-san's fate could be. Episode 3. This episode opens up with Mr. Lee being interrogated by Jae-ik yet again as another officer bursts in and lets them know that the virus has spread outside of the high school. In a rather stoic manner, Mr. Lee hopelessly says that we're all doomed and gives us the iconic title drop. Now, let's shift our focus and refresh your memory a little. Remember that one student who had a tummy ache when patient 0 entered the infirmary? Well, she's actually quite pregnant and about to give birth. Yeah. That isn't all that great, is it? Luckily for her, she left the school before things got out of hand and has given birth in the middle of a park, but abandons the baby right after. Ouch. Let's pause that storyline for a little and cut back to the students hiding with Miss Park. I say it's right about time we introduce them, no? We have Nam-ra, the class president, Hya-rung, Ji-min, Dai-soo, Woo-jin, Jun-young, Gwing-soo, who had a tough upbringing, Na-yeon, a girl born with a golden spoon, and Anjo, who is still waiting for Chang-soo and Soo-hyuk to come back, seeing as Chang-san had been thrown out the window and Soo-hyuk is nowhere to be found. Thankfully, it doesn't take much longer before they both find their paths back together while they climb their way to safety. That's right, Chang-san and Soo-hyuk have found their way back to the group. Thank goodness. Anyway, there's quite a bit of tension amongst the group, particularly between Gwang-soo and Na-yeon, who are constantly throwing shade at one another. At times, it gets a little too intense. But I'll tell you right now, you are truly going to end up hating this girl right here. All of a sudden, a horde of zombies breaks into the safe room through the window as the boys from the group fight them off. After the fight is over, Na-yeon accuses Gwang-soo of being infected due to his bloody nose and has a bit of a scratch, but he assures them he isn't. Meanwhile, the girl who has just given birth is walking around Hyosan, the city we're in, and encounters absolute madness as infected people seem to be all around as she runs away from the zombies. As this is happening, Hyosan paramedics are trying to figure out what causes the virus and how to stop it, keeping one of the zombies in restraints to avoid getting infected. As luck may have it, he bites one of the paramedics and infects him, leading the others to put him in restraints as well. We then come back to our leading group of students as they try to figure out what to do with Gwang-soo and possibility of him being infected. They decide to lock him inside a recording room inside the classroom, and he vows to stay there for an hour, which is a lot longer than necessary for symptoms to start showing up. In an effort to cheer him up during his longer than necessary quarantine, Chang-san does silly faces and they whistle a song with the door as their only barrier. Seeing as Gwang-soo won't leave the recording room, the teacher and the other students force Na-yeon to go apologize to him. Basically, with no other choice, Na-yeon brings a handkerchief along with her and cleans Gwang-soo's wound while she insults and berates him due to his low economic status behind closed doors. This sends Guang-Su to the limit and he pushes Na-Yoon, leaving the recording studio and letting his peers know of what she just did. News about the incoming zombie apocalypse in Hyo-san starts breaking out as uninfected citizens are forced to evacuate the city. As you might imagine, the Hyo-san High doesn't really have the option to just leave and fight the countless zombies all around. Nighttime rolls around and Na-Yoon, still despising Guang-Su, is glad to admit that she was right after all when his nose begins to bleed and his eyes turn red. Realizing that he has turned, Guang-Su panics and promises to leave without making too much of a fuss. His zombified persona takes over and he starts attacking his crying friends, but Chung-san whistles the same song he did in the recording room and manages to get his attention as he falls out of the window. As this is happening, the girl that just had her baby is running amidst a chaotic Hyo-san, doing her best to avoid anyone that comes her way as she decides to rescue her baby back from the park from starving zombies. She breaks into an empty restaurant along with her child as she notices that she too has been bit. In order to keep the baby safe, she restrains herself as she succumbs to her new zombie state of being. We cut to the paramedics, who are now joined by a member of the National Assembly, as they are told they have to wait with the zombies for a while longer before they can send a rescue helicopter. The lady from the National Assembly is offended and asks if they told the rescue team that she was with them, clearly establishing that her life is worth more than the others. One of the paramedics, who is also Anjo's dad, tries his hardest to figure out any information released about the well-being of the students, but he gets no response. Once again, we cut back to the students as the class president Nam-ra tells Ni-yeon that she knows what she did. She proceeds of accusing Na-yeon of staining her handkerchief with zombie blood to clean Guang-Su's scratch, which makes sense seeing as how long his symptoms took to show up. Initially, Na-yeon denies everything but then admits it, acknowledging that she killed Guang-Su. She leaves the room, planning to kill herself with the zombies, but Miss Park follows after her in the hopes of saving her, but not before telling the rest of the students to stay alive and to not cause anyone to die. Episode 4. This episode sets us off different than the rest. A live streamer records himself entering Hyo-san in hopes of checking out if the place has truly turned into Zombieland. Of course, this proves to be a terrible decision when only a couple of hours later the guy is struggling to survive and avoid the zombies at every corner. We get to see Chung-san's mom nearby, who is doing her best to stay alive and get her son back from school, which will also prove not to be a great idea when she finally arrives at her son's location and gets bitten by Guang-Su, Chung-san's former best friend. Grim, huh? We then cut on over to our main group of students, who are speculating if Miss Park and Na-yeon are still alive, seeing as they haven't heard any screaming just yet. However, this subject turns out to be irrelevant when one of the students confesses he needs to go to the bathroom, which leads the rest of the group admitting to be in the same situation. Luckily for them, Anjo's firefighter dad showed her how to build a toilet from scratch, and well, they make their very own DIY toilet. They discuss the possibility of leaving the classroom but quickly shut it down, realizing that it is still too soon to make a decision. Now, we make a quick stop over to Min Yoon-ji, the girl Guinam decided to make his new victim. Remember? See, Min Yoon-ji was about to jump off the building to end her suffering. But just as she was about to, zombies started falling out the windows, which of course made her change her mind. Now she's stuck with Chul-soo, a guy who has a crush on her. As this is happening, Guinam is mercilessly killing zombies left and right, almost sociopathically. Anjo's dad, who is isolated along with the paramedics and the lady from the National Assembly, tries to leave the room and get to his daughter, but is convinced otherwise. We cut over to the group in the bathroom, plotting to leave the haven at some point, but things grow tense and violent when the two girls, Ha-ri and Mi-jin, disagree with one another, leading to a fight between the two. Meanwhile, Jae-ik is shocked over the news of the zombie apocalypse as Mr. Lee retells the story of how he started the virus. After finding out that Jin-soo tried to off himself due to the intense bullying and getting ignored after reporting the violence, he realized that neither he nor his son can change the system. So he decided to change his son instead. Mr. Lee admits that he knew his son would turn into a monster, but he preferred that scenario over getting tortured as a human. To make matters worse, there is no treatment or cure for the virus. Jae-ik and Mr. Lee receive orders to evacuate the city as the zombies intercept the building while Mr. Lee watches and smiles, knowing exactly what's bound to happen next. He gets bitten by the undead as Jae-ik tries to rescue him, hoping to figure out how to stop the new epidemic. But Mr. Lee only instructs him to find his laptop in the school lab now that his fate has been sealed and his turning is bound to happen any second now. Fortunately, Jae-ik is able to leave the building safely and finds another uninfected cop and tells him about the laptop, just in case Jae-ik dies. The sun finally rises as we hit day 2 of the zombie pandemic, and as you might imagine, the students grow desperate for rescue. The group in the bathroom decides to head out as the girl from archery class, Ha-ri, goes on a search for her younger brother while the others follow. We cut back to the two kids on the roof. There, Min Yoon-ji decides to go on a search for his tormentor after finding out the video of her naked body was scheduled to be posted online unless Chul-soo paid Guinam a certain amount of money at a certain time. But considering there's a zombie apocalypse going on in the school, paying him to stop the video from going live is simply not possible. Seeing as the video is going to get published either way, Min Yoon-ji leaves the roof and walks down the stairs into the school to search and destroy her classmates' phones that were conveniently confiscated by the institution before the outbreak even began. Sure, half the school turned into zombies now and the rest are hiding to avoid getting bitten. I don't think students will be too interested to risk their lives only to check what's new on social media. Anyway, Min Yoon-ji gets obviously bitten and that is the end of her. Or is it? Later on, Chang-san and Soo-hyuk also leave their haven in hopes of finding a phone to call the police, but much to their surprise, they find a yet unturned Min Yoon-ji smashing up phones. Seems like her will to avoid her video from getting spread was much stronger than the virus itself, huh? Chang-san manages to snatch up one while Soo-hyuk fights the undead, which ultimately gets them separated. We now make a quick visit over to the paramedics who are being told that a helicopter is waiting for them. They hurry upstairs, encountering absolute zombie madness upon leaving the room, but make it out okay. While running from the zombies, Chang-san finds Gui-nam and the principal in a room as the bully ties the principal up and prepares to kill him. In an effort to protect the principal, Chang-san pulls out the phone and records him. Gui-nam doesn't care though, killing him anyway as he chases and throws the knife at Chang-san's back. Episode 5. Refugees who have evacuated from Hyosan get rejected each corner they turn, with protesters rallying up to keep them from entering their city. After finally escaping the violence of Hyosan, they encounter angry citizens throwing eggs and all sorts of things to deny the refugees entry. Soo-hyuk returns to the classroom group but without Chang-san, who is currently running away from the psychotic Gui-nam whose knife failed to stab him. This begins a brief cat-and-mouse chase between the two, who lands themselves in a library filled with zombies. Gui-nam and Chang-san have a bit of a power struggle where the bully appears to be the clear victor. That is until Chang-san stabs him in the eye with the phone, throwing Gui-nam to the zombies as the bully swears revenge while the undead gnaw at him mercilessly while he escapes. The bathroom gang have finally left the toilets as Ha-ri throws arrows to every zombie she sees. They find a secluded room with a computer and they quickly turn to social media for help. But as it turns out, Korea has declared martial law and has banned all communications, internet or otherwise, from Hyosan to keep news and rumors about the virus from spreading. We head on over to classroom group who are stressed over Chang-san's disappearance, especially An-jo, who is trying to devise a plan to get him back. She asks Jun-young about some drones that might be available to them at the science lab to help them find Chang-san. The group agrees that it would be advantageous to have a drone with them, which is more than enough confirmation for An-jo to find the drone with the company of Jun-young, who agrees to tag along. Now we follow Jae-ik and his junior cop Ho-cheol, trying to escape the zombies surrounding the streets in Hyosan. As they run away from the undead, the two men enter an apparently empty restaurant but find the girl that had her baby back in episode 3. You see, when she saw what had become of the city, she returned for her baby and locked herself in Chang-san's mom's diner. But being that she had already been bitten and knew that was going to turn, she tied herself up to avoid harming the infant. The two policemen find the baby just fine and look for some milk to calm the hunger down. Back in the school, An-jo and Jun-young manage to bring back the drone to their haven and get it up in the air to find Chang-san. However, upon flying the drone and realizing that everyone has turned, the little bit of hope they had left quickly diminishes. All the while, the group from the bathroom head on over to the archery training center in order to find more arrows and easily move around the school. They jump out the windows while the other group's drone is closely behind them. Unfortunately, the students at the classroom couldn't quite see the bathroom gang, but they spot the arrows impaled in the zombies as one of the students, Woo Jin, says that his sister Ha-ri had archery competition that day and realizes that she might be out there, undead or alive. I guess we're the only ones with that answer, huh? While flying their drone around the school, they find Chang-san alone in another classroom but still safe. Seeing as they are unable to communicate with him, they send the drone outside in hopes of finding life out there, but things go bleak once they see that the entire city has turned, including Jimin's parents. Simultaneously, the paramedics and the lady from the National Assembly finally reach a military quarantine zone where survivors from the breakout are being quarantined. At the end of the episode, we realize that Min Yoon-ji and Gui-nam have survived getting bitten as the virus has evolved to withstand infection with the advantage that zombies no longer seek them out, which Mr. Lee theorized that this could create a new breed of humans. Fueled by rage and thirsty for revenge, Gui-nam only has one goal in mind: find Chang-san and shred him to pieces. Episode 6. This episode starts us off with the classroom group coming up with yet another plan to find Chang-san and draw the zombies away from them. Seeing as they're located right next to the recording room, the class president Nam-ra comes up with the idea of broadcasting a message to Chang-san, ordering him to stay put as they play a meditation CD from the school speakers to get the zombies to follow the sound. Pretty clever, huh? However, unaware that Gui-nam is relatively alive and out for Chang-san's blood, he deduces where the group is located. Armed with his kitchen knife, he sets out to find the group. Upon hearing the message his friend sent him, Chang-san decides to stay put in the lonesome classroom, which turns out not to be so lonesome as Na-yan, the snob rich girl, is actually hiding in the closet in that same room. A closet which is full of food donations that she won't share, by the way. Honestly, she should have died long ago, but her teacher sacrificed to save her life, and well, now she's hiding. Back to the group. They get all the zombies distracted except for one that seems to be glitching, leading the friends to leave their refuge despite the zombie in front of them. When the zombie turns around and spots the group, it begins chasing after them while they run. Soo-hyuk tries to fight it off, but to no avail. That is until Guinam kills it with the kitchen knife, saving him from being bitten. As it turns out, Guinam only saved him to get to Chang-san's location, leading the two to get in a mortal combat right in the middle of the staircase. Nam-ra arrives at the scene and puts Guinam on a chokehold, but he retaliates by biting her, which leads to Soo-hyuk getting a sudden surge of energy as he throws Guinam out the window. But oh surprise, he stands up from the ground again. We make a quick stop to the bathroom gang, who has safely made it back to the archery training center except for Jun-seung, the cowardly member of this group who has been accidentally stabbed. Now we make our way over to the classroom group, who have moved locations and are now in the music room reunited with Chung-san. Nam-ra and Soo-hyuk join them soon after, and almost immediately, the rest of the group notice that Nam-ra has been bitten. But much like Guinam and Yoon-ji, she hasn't exactly turned just yet. The group grows paranoid, but Soo-hyuk defends her, explaining that she wasn't bit by a zombie, just a crazed Guinam. Chang-san explains that he saw Guinam get bitten by a horde of zombies, which confuses Soo-hyuk, who saw the bully acting coherently, unlike the rest of the undead. In order to find out if she got bitten while remaining safe, Nam-ra sits by the window asking Soo-hyuk to push her if she starts to turn. A couple of seconds later, Nam-ra's eyes change colors and her fingers begin to twitch, zombie style, while Soo-hyuk still refuses to throw her out. This leads to a fight between Chang-san and Soo-hyuk, but An-jo stops them, claiming that her symptoms are not as severe just yet. Back at the quarantine center, things aren't much better as the paramedics find out that they are expected to remain isolated for a minimum of a month. Knowing full well that he has a daughter at school, An-jo's father fools the system and successfully breaks out, planning to go straight to Hyosan High to save his daughter, but gets shot on the way out, his fate unknown. Meanwhile, Jae-ik, Ho-cheol, and the baby leave the restaurant to find Mr. Lee's laptop despite Ho-cheol's cowardly protests. However, they aren't able to stray too far when yet another horde of zombies hurry towards them as an unturned girl asks for help. Back at the restaurant and with another kid with them, they are once again unsure about how to move next. We cut back over to the classroom group, who are arguing about what to do with Nam-ra's situation, but grow distracted once they realize how hungry they are. Na-yan, the snob rich girl hiding in the storage of the music room, overhears everything, even when she realizes that she has an unlimited amount of supplies in that same room with her. The group finds a camera which they use to record one last message in case they succumb to the zombies or hunger and dehydration. Episode 7. An-jo's father is apparently out of danger, carrying what appears to be a minor wound and ignoring it to set off on his mission to find his daughter. Back at the classroom, Soo-hyuk privately tells Nam-ra that he has feelings for her, and much to his surprise, she reciprocates by kissing him. They rejoin the group as Nam-ra begins experiencing heightened hearing, vision, and smell, pulling her further into her half-zombified state, or as Dae-soo calls it, a hombi, short of half-zombie. Once again, the group realizes that they are stuck and in need to devise a plan to leave the music room. They barricade the room and begin using the instruments, microphone, and camera to make music and to track the biggest horde of zombies we've seen yet, as they make their escape through the hallway to make their way to the rooftop. Simultaneously, Guinam, who has the same abilities as Nam-ra, is out there, still behaving like a psychopath and getting uninfected peers killed, growing angrier and more desperate to get revenge on Chang-san. Upon hearing the racket coming from the music room, it doesn't take him much longer to figure out his location. We cut over to Jae-ik, Ho-cheol, the baby, and the girl, let's call them the detective gang, while they make a second attempt to leave the restaurant to get Mr. Lee's computer. They find a motorcycle and use it as they finally escape and dodge the zombies coming their way. However, they run into the live streamer from a couple of episodes back, who is now trapped on the roof of a house and begging for help. Jae-ik stops to help him, but Ho-cheol has had enough, taking the bike with him along with the baby and the girl, much to Jae-ik's annoyance. Back at the quarantine center, upon the insistence of the National Assembly lady, the army finally decides to send a chopper to Hyosan High to rescue the students. Back to our classroom students. They have finally arrived to the door leading to the rooftop after escaping countless zombies, but find that it's locked. Min Yoon-ji's friend, Chul-soo, is safely on the other side of the rooftop but refuses to let them in while a helicopter promptly arrives at the school. Still struggling to enter the rooftop and trying to keep the zombies at bay, the classroom students encounter yet another problem when Chang-san and Soo-hyuk run into a vengeful and bloodthirsty Guinam, who they believed to be dead. Episode 8. This episode opens with Min Yoon-ji, the school's victim of ridicule and another Hambi, getting flashbacks of all the torment she endured during her school years. In a symbolic way to get even, she starts a fire at the school. Chul-soo boards the helicopter that arrived at Hyeosan High, claiming to be the school's sole survivor, knowing full well that he wasn't as he leaves with the army. Hope really is lost, after all. On the other side of the roof, Guinam catches up to Chung-san, and well, you know the saying, an eye for an eye? Let's just say he plans to take it literally. Luckily, thanks to Namra's newfound Hambi abilities, she throws Guinam down the stairs and buys Chung-san's eye some extra time. They finally manage to enter the now empty rooftop while they watch the chopper leave the premises. Trying not to lose hope, the classroom students, now dubbed the Rooftop Gang, make an SOS distress signal in case another helicopter appears. We cut over to the outside world as Jae-ik is now left alone with the live streamer as he scolds him for entering Hyeosan just to gain followers. While they try to lure zombies away from them, Ho-chul, the traitor from earlier, arrives in a yellow bus and rescues them. Guess he wasn't that bad after all. When driving away, Ho-chul accidentally runs a biker over who turns out to be Min Yoon-jin. Almost immediately, the army spots the group and rescues them, taking them to the military center, unaware that Min Yoon-jin is actually infected. Now let's visit the bathroom group, who are currently training on how to shoot arrows to keep the zombies away. Mi-jin is obviously at least a little bit attracted to Ha-ri, which keeps her just a little distracted from her main goal: killing zombies. Back at the school's rooftop, the students built a campfire, sang songs, and started becoming friendlier with one another as they tell each other stories about their past, and Namra admits that she finally feels like she has friends. Elsewhere, Na-yeon, who is still hiding in the music room, has a sudden change of heart regarding her peers upon watching the videos in the camera. She packs a bag full of supplies to bring up to the rooftop and share with the others. Unfortunately, Na-yeon gets an unexpected visitor, something worse than a zombie: Guinam. He doesn't waste a minute before biting her, claiming that he was a little hungry. See? He's so much worse than a regular zombie. Back at the campfire, the students talk about high school and their crushes, which is when Chung-san finally confesses that he has liked An-jo ever since they were 6 years old. Hooray! For the time being, An-jo doesn't seem to reciprocate, but that's not where Chung-san's misfortune ends. Right after munching on Na-yeon, Guinam, with his super zombie abilities, climbed up to the roof and ran towards Chung-san, his mind set on gouging his eye out. See? He took it far too literally. Episode 9. We pick up right where we left off last episode, with Guinam about to gouge Chung-san's eye out. Luckily, just when he is about to do it, Namra, packed with her Hambi skills, fights off Guinam and once again throws him out of the rooftop. I guess that's how you're supposed to fight back when you don't have any weapons on you, huh? As you might have guessed, Guinam wakes up yet again. At the military center, Min Yoon-ji runs into Chul-soo as they engage in friendly conversation. Not for long though, as Yoon-ji openly admits to wanting to eat Chul-soo. Meanwhile, Jae-ik is telling the soldiers about Mr. Lee's laptop at Hyeosan High and explains that it has information about the virus, now dubbed Jonas virus. This leads to the ultimate sign of survival when yet another chopper gets sent to the school and spots our group at the rooftop, who gets tested for the virus, yet all of them appear to be clear, including Namra, whose low temperature has been classified as hypothermia. Later, the rescuers promise to come back for them as soon as they get the laptop from Mr. Lee's lab, much to the students' relief. Right when the rescuers get the laptop and come back for the students, Min Yoon-ji bites Chul-soo as they find out that she was asymptomatic, leading the superior officers to order the soldiers to abandon the students due to this new finding. Once again, all hope is gone. Now that there are asymptomatic cases, the military decides to further quarantine the remaining survivors to detect the possibly infected and isolate them. Let's not forget that we're currently under martial law. The army then decides to use Min Yoon-ji and a fully zombified soldier in order to test on both, hoping to be able to easily identify the asymptomatic cases. Back at Hyeosan High, it begins to rain and thunder, which causes great distress to both Namra and Guinam, impairing their vision and hearing. This allows the rooftop students to flee the school without being noticed by the zombies towards a nearby mountain. The bathroom gang also notices the weakened zombies as they make the same decision to go to the mountain. The episode ends with Chung-san running into his turned mom before they make it to their decided location. Episode 10. Upon seeing his zombified mother, Chung-san screams and cries at her state, attracting the attention of even more zombies nearby. While on their way to the mountain, Hyo-rung falls but gets rescued by Ha-ri, a member of the bathroom gang who was going the same way as the other students. They all finally get reunited and make it into the sports equipment room, where Ha-ri and Woo-jin, the siblings, are visibly relieved over the others' well-being. Back at the military center, the soldiers analyze the data found in Mr. Lee's laptop and realize that if they do nothing, the virus would spread to the rest of South Korea and eventually the world. Hence, they decide to bomb Hyeosan to stop the epidemic, even when in doing so they'd be killing at the very least 10,000 survivors. A day later, the students in the sports center's equipment room devise yet another plan and use the sports equipment and metal carts found in the room to build a barricade around themselves while trying to make their way through the hall. Unfortunately, the zombies overpower the barricade as Jun Young gets bitten after trying to save Mi Jin. Having accepted his fate, Jun Young pushes himself out of the haven and does his best to protect his peers during his remaining seconds. To make matters worse, Guinam is bursting every door trying to find the group. While the group tries to burst the door down and escape the zombies, Anzhou opens the door to finally reunite with her father. Episode 11. After Anzhou reunites with her father, the students are finally able to escape the room, landing themselves in the outside world yet again. Now led by Anzhou's dad, Soju, who instructs the students to follow him to the tennis court as that's how they'll get to the mountain. Once they get to their location, they become surrounded by zombies as Soju does his best to distract them, telling the group to continue on with her path. As you might imagine, this is when we part ways with Anzhou's dad, who gets bitten while trying to protect his daughter. The group reaches the school's construction site and find a temporary safe haven on an unfinished balcony. Elsewhere, the military discovers that zombies are attracted to sound and decide to use some drones that emit sound to lead the undead in Hyosan over to the bombing locations they have chosen, which of course includes Hyosan High. Back to our students. Namra's urge to bite the others grows stronger by the minute, and in order to repress these desires, she bites her own hand. Soo-hyuk witnesses this, promising to let her bite him in case she has the urge to hurt herself again. Minutes after this happens, thanks to Namra's super hearing, she finds out that the military is sending an evacuation notice to the citizens in the 4 locations to be blown up. As expected, things get worse for our students when Guinam finally finds their location. This is where things go south quickly. Vengeful and full of rage over his eye and his new zombie or hombi condition, Guinam grabs a hold of Chang-san and bites him, infecting our leading man throughout the show. Just before he turns, Chang-san throws Guinam out of the balcony yet again, but you know how it is. He will rise again. Anzhou and Chang-san have an emotional goodbye and they finally share one simple kiss. Quickly accepting his fate, Chang-san lures the zombies into the construction site over to him as he screams that he is the happiest guy in the school. Okay, I think I might cry. Thanks to Chang-san, the students finally escape from the construction site safely. Guinam catches up to Chang-san as they get into the final standoff where the antagonist finally gets what he wants, Chang-san's eye. And then, all of a sudden, boom! The bombs go off and Chang-san and Guinam burn and fall to their deaths. Right after this happens, the military commander, knowing it was his decision to bomb Hyosan, records a video where he explains what he found on Mr. Lee's computer and how the teacher had to kill his wife and son. Taking full responsibility of his actions, the military commander dials his own wife one last time before shooting himself. Episode 12. The remaining survivors of Hyosan High, our students, take one last look at the construction site so Anzhou can say her symbolic goodbyes to Chang-san. They return to their path and finally get out of the mountains and enter the city, where Namra senses zombies around them and instructs the group to run. Armed with things found around the street, the students begin fighting the approaching zombies and actually manage to take quite a few of them down. Not without casualty though, as Woojin, Hari's brother, gets infected, and to ensure he won't attack the group, Namra with her hombi skills snaps his neck. Namra's zombified senses begin growing and growing when she starts getting the urge to eat her friends and even hearing voices in her head that encourage her to do so. Not wanting to succumb to her urges, Namra decides to fall behind, but Anzhou and Soo-hyuk are quick to notice her absence. They follow after and catch her eating a zombie, and even goes full-on zombie on Anzhou when she attempts to eat her but manages to stop. Regretful for almost killing Anzhou, she deserts the students and goes her own way. Not too long after, the students find an actual rescue team and get taken to the quarantine camps. Once there, they get questioned over the infection and Mr. Lee, but most of the students refuse to cooperate, especially after the first rescue team abandoned them and caused more of the group to die. 3 months and 17 days later, martial law in Hyosan gets lifted, but surviving citizens remain quarantined just in case. In hopes of seeing Namra again, the 6 remaining students devise a plan to break out of the camp and follow a light they see coming from the shambles of Hyosan High. Once the group gets to what used to be their school, Namra greets them at the rooftop looking healthy and composed despite being a hombi. Their reunion gets cut short when Namra cryptically says, "They're back," and jumps out of the roof while the others just stare after her. And with that, Season 1 ends. Now tell me, what do you think of the show? Let me know about it in the comments, and as always, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and share it with your friends. See you next time.